I call to order this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. We will open with an invocation from Ms. Kupka and the Pledge of Allegiance from Mr. Miller.
Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us all together here this evening to conduct the business of our community. I'd ask that you give special prayers to our first responder family, and particularly our fire department and those in our region, as they have suffered multiple losses over the course of the past week. Please watch over them. Their job is already difficult enough. I'd also ask that you watch over all who gather here this evening, and that you grant us all travel mercies as we depart home at the end of the meeting. In your name we pray, amen.
All right, Mr. Miller, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. I will now open the floor for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at that time of the public hearing. If anyone would like to come up and provide public comment, please provide your name, your address, and you'll have your 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes. I came tonight to thank you for the service to the community. The people of King George elected you to make good decisions for the county, especially when it comes to taxes and other problems. I want to ask the supervisors to help Mrs. Kapka to get rid of the decal. It's okay to charge a one-time fee because he needed for the landfill, but not over and over again. At the last meeting, I heard that some company wanted to build a drug rehabilitation center in the middle of Dahlgren. These people don't care about anything but profit. They see this business as a gold mine. They want to bring people from Maryland and other places. When I go to Walmart, I see many Maryland tags. They come to get cigarettes, groceries, even though Maryland doesn't have taxes on groceries. You keep telling us we need to bring more people and business to the community, but it puts more stress on the police, schools, and fire department. Last Friday, I couldn't get out of Presidential Lakes because the traffic was terrible on Route 3. I thought it was due to an accident, but it wasn't. The traffic in Route 3, 218, 301 are absolutely congested. It wasn't like that this before. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Debbie Fairfax, 623 Kings Highway. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, in August 2022, the first application for rezoning to include data centers came before us. As part of that initial application, a change to the comprehensive plan was requested to include my family's farmland, my mom's home, my sister's home, and many neighbors' homes. Homes and farmland would be slated as desirous to the county to eventually be industrial. It's understandable why a reasonable person would advocate against a change like that, especially since the applicant asked for a huge rezoning of over 700 acres of agricultural land to industrial, but provided no details. Thankfully, you all agreed. In the weeks that followed, my husband and I spoke to you and listened to you. We came to understand the need for industrial tax revenue and about the other significant issues affecting the county. We began to advocate for a win-win situation, one where industry and citizenry could peacefully coexist and both thrive. We tried to be part of the solution. We saw the ordinance overhaul process as a godsend. We repeatedly stated that good ordinances with appropriate setbacks and noise limits would be essential, and it sounds like supervisors from other counties have echoed those remarks. Spotsylvania is trying to get some updated data center regs in place. From the Freelance Star of February 17th, Spotsy's staff recommended that, quote, the county require noise studies prior to permit approval and use building design rules, setbacks, and buffers to mitigate noise problems, end quote. If this has been unclear, let me make it clear. We understand that you need industrial revenue and the offers that come with it to solve other problems in the county. What we're asking is that you please make sure that the people living near there are protected. That's why we advocated for the special exception, since the current data center and battery storage ordinances are not fully fleshed out, and we don't know when an applicant may return. We do greatly thank you for your votes for the change order. With regard to the establishment of a technology zone in King George, please note that number one, Spotsy is updating their data center ordinances. Number two, the ordinance governing their technology zone specifically states in section 24-11 that the zoning ordinance is not affected. All zoning ordinances remain in full effect inside the technology zone. And number three, Stafford's Industrial Virginia Gateway lies between the Stafford Regional Airport and I-95. That's different than what we have in King George. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to get?
Hello again. My name's Julianne. I live on Village Lane. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody. You guys did a wonderful job against Pyramid Healthcare. Thank you for letting us and you guys see the real thing. The real thing is that they are going to have criminals in this facility. They're going to bust them from the jails, and we don't know what we're going to do and how we're going to keep them contained. You guys made a lot of really good points, but we need a couple answers. After we spoke, Pyramid Healthcare was nice enough to stand in the hallway. We asked them how big the fence was going to be. They're not going to build a fence. We asked them where do they think the cabs and the Ubers are going to come from when convicts or jailbirds or incarcerated people leave the drug rehab facility. We don't have cabs in our side of town. We don't have Ubers. How are you guys going to handle that? We still have a lot of questions, and we were wondering if there were any answers. At the end of the night, we stood out there, and I asked the 4 representatives from Pyramid Healthcare what they thought of the area that they're building. How did they expect us to feel when this healthcare building of a 100-bed unit was going to be in our neighborhood? And you know what, guys? They didn't even go to the job site. They didn't even look at this piece of land. But the guy was nice enough to tell me that they're going to build a $13 million building. And you know who's going to work it? My neighbors, the people in King George. Most of us already have jobs. There are hundreds of jobs available here in King George. How many people are qualified to work in a drug rehab? But that's not the main question, the main problem. I have information from the state residential treatment facility that says you don't really have to have that much education. You need to have a couple classes and you need to know how to do CPR. They don't even have to have a doctor on premise, especially now with COVID. I can do a teledoc. So they don't have to have a doctor on presence. If they have 100 people in that unit, they only have to, at night, they have to have 1 worker per 30 people. A couple of you guys have been police officers. What happens when you get inmates together? They plan. What happens if a couple of these guys get together and break out all together at the same time? What happens if this is at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning when a lot of us are walking our dogs, or at 6 o'clock when the kids are going onto the school bus and it's dark? How are you guys going to protect us and maintain our safety? That guy sure did talk about a lot about human rights, but what about our rights? What about the citizens' rights already? How are you guys going to make sure that we're protected? Can you force them to put up a fence? We already know that there's no security, there's no fence. They're going to have a door alarm. They're going to call the sheriff's department when they need help. Can you guys help us make sure we're safe and secure?
Good evening, Kim Clark, Fairfax Drive. I'm coming before you so I can make this public record. At the last meeting, I believe Mr. Collins asked Mr. Miller regards to whether or not the water would be adequate if we had the adequate resources to support Pyramid in the neighborhood. The Thursday, I called Mr. Miller asking him a copy of the report. His reply was yes. I asked for a copy of the report so I could analyze it to shore it up. To date, I have yet to receive that report. I made several phone calls. I even had Ms. Hall as well as Mr. Maynard get in contact with Mr. Miller to ask him to forward me the report. I have yet to receive it to date. So I'm hoping now that it's public record, I will get the report so I can analyze it. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Dines, do we have anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Did anyone receive any correspondence to be entered into the record? Okay, in that case, I will close public comment. And we will move on to members, reports from members of the board. Ms. Binder.
Yes, thank you very much. Over the last couple of weeks, I've attended the Healthy Generations, our annual meeting. The senior population is growing in the area, and they're looking at the possibility of a regional senior center. The Dahlgren Heritage Museum has established a relationship with a museum in California that is working on with a battleship, and they're trying to co-work so they could maybe learn from each other and cross-promote. I was very pleased that the King George Historical Society has more enthusiasm going on and it is moving in a positive direction. There was a lot of people at the last meeting, so it's really good to see that and that it is going in a positive direction. And then the last, I want to thank everyone who has come to speak. And we had two things on the docket in the last meeting. We had all the folks who came with Pyramid Healthcare and the representatives from Pyramid Healthcare. And then right after that, Mr. Collins and I had a motion on looking at an ordinance for data centers, battery storage, and solar. And the biggest thing I want to bring up again is to make sure that we do think about the citizens and all of our things and by right development and how that's not always the best thing sometimes in certain industries and certain businesses, because you want to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's crossed and to make sure our citizens are considered. And especially since we look at, there's been a lot in the last 2 weeks in Warrington and Spotsy and Stafford and Loudoun and Fairfax and Prince William counties about data centers and in other localities about solar farms. And we need to make sure that we protect our citizens and let the ordinance process go through to the end before we make any major decisions, because our citizens do matter. Industry matters because, yes, we do need the tax revenue so that we don't overburden our population, but we need to do it right, and we need to learn from our neighbors in the north who maybe regret some of the choices they made, but they were first to the line for the race. So we're in the back of the race right now, and we're moving up closer to the line to start like a big marathon. And we got to make sure we do it the right way and make sure that our citizens, we look out for them while still bringing in industry and revenue to help not burden the tax base. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Binder. Mr. Collins.
Good evening, and thanks everyone for coming. Ms. Level, last week on Route 3, I did notice that I was sitting in traffic and I thought it was an accident also, but it was nothing. Hopefully that's an anomaly because it's not normally that way, but it was that way last week for at least 2 days. I don't know what was going on. Ms. Fairfax, Ms. Julianne, Ms. Clark, all of you are asking for the same thing. whether it be data centers, Pyramid Healthcare, whatever it is, you all ask us for one thing, and that is to protect us. That's what you said. And that's what our job is to protect y'all. So there's a lot of things in motion now. And we will hopefully, some of these things you'll see maybe in the future that that's exactly what we're trying to do. Can't speak out of line at this time, but we all have your best interest at heart. I've spoken to every one of the board members, county administrator. They all have your best interest at heart. How we get there could be a little messy, but that's what happens in government. Ms. Clark, was that a FOIA request for that report? Well, no. So I was just trying to find out if it was a FOIA report request or not. I am curious of why she didn't get the report.
You and I did speak. I'm trying to make sure I got your email correct. KK1girl@AOL.com. I sent you an email on the 16th of this month. I know I sent the first one, it didn't go through, but then I sent another one, KK1girl. And I'm not disputing you, but if I didn't, I'll send it again. Okay.
So maybe you can copy it.
And I'll be happy to provide it. So if I can answer the question, the typical process for community development is to have a development review committee look at these particular developments. This one was looked at by all the relevant departments. Water and Sewer Service Authority was asked, and I think you'll see in there, unfortunately, I misspoke. There was never a formal written document that was prepared by the county engineer, but I did point out in my email to you that there's 47,000 gallons a day water capacity in that area where this particular building would go. Their usage, according to their proposal, is 20,000 gallons a day, and that would leave still the availability for everybody in that area. So that is what was provided to me based on the report by the engineer for the company that was, I'm trying to remember the name of the company that Pyramid Health is using, but our engineer looked at those numbers and then determined that the capacity was sufficient. That's what I reported, I believe, to either Ms. Kupka or to Mr. Collins at the last meeting, but it was based on a legitimate review of that. There's no formalized report that is done, but I will assure you that that is the case. And I will be happy to send you another email if it didn't, but I did send an email, and I will make sure that the board sees that email.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I know sometimes I've heard the same thing about different county offices not responding in a timely manner. Maybe they could, if they send an email, maybe they could say, could you respond that you received this email? So therefore, there would be no miscommunication in regards to that. Just an idea. Finally, as I spoke to earlier about this board helping folks in the community, we listened, we asked questions, Pyramid, and we got worse answers than I thought it was. So we'll see where that goes from here. And thank you everybody for coming out and staying on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by thanking everyone who came out this evening for the meeting, whether you spoke or not. We appreciate your participation. Ms. Lavelle, I will again endeavor this year to try during the budget cycle to eliminate the $23 vehicle license fee that is imposed every year in the June bill. I think that towards the end of the cycle last year, we have a suggested plan that would allow us to do so if we prorate. So there was a proposal brought forward by the Commissioner of the Revenue and the Treasurer, and I think I saw the Commissioner is here this evening. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that across the finish line this year. Ms. Fairfax, thank you as always for coming out and providing your comment and remaining engaged. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Dirts, so I move to seek consensus of the board to direct staff to draft correspondence to Pyramid Healthcare with regard to the questions she asked this evening that remain unanswered.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Ms. Clark, hopefully it sounds like your issue is going to be resolved here in short order, but thank you as well for coming out and expressing your comments regarding the same matter. So on that pyramid matter, for those who did not make it to the end of the meeting, the board did reconvene in public at the end of the last meeting and direct staff to draft a text amendment. So basically change the local ordinance so that going forward, a hospital would not be a by right use. It would require a special exception permit. So it would have to go through an application process. So we are absolutely hearing you and looking out for you and doing what we can in the short term as well to address the situation. I want to congratulate the members of the King George High School boys and girls swim teams who competed at the state tournament last weekend. I want to congratulate the King George High School wrestling team who also competed at states last weekend. Special congratulations to Aiden Inzana, who is the Class 4B runner-up state champion for his weight class. Good luck to the King George High School boys basketball team. They are playing right now at home in the regional quarterfinal at the high school. I want to let everyone know King George Department of Social Services is hosting a family day in conjunction with the King George VFW Sergeant Nicholas C. Mason Post 12202 at their second annual post-birthday celebration on May 6th, 2023 at Sealston Sports Complex from 2 to 7 p.m. The public is invited, and you may also sign up to be a vendor or sponsor. And as I mentioned it in the prayer this evening, please do keep our Department of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services family in your prayers. You may have noticed the black bunting at Company 1. It will remain there longer. In the past week, they have now lost 3 lifetime members of their volunteer squad. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka. Mr. Stonehill.
Thank you. Good evening. Everybody, just thanks for coming out. It's good to hear everybody's comments and stuff. And as Mr. Collins said, we definitely have everybody's best interest at heart when we do really anything that goes on in the county. You know, sometimes we feel like the little Dutch boy in the dike. You know, you get these holes and you got to keep reaching around and plugging all these different holes when these new situations come up that we just don't have on our book. So, I mean, we're trying our best up here, and it's kind of a work in progress. And and Julianne, I've talked to a lot of people throughout the county in the last couple of weeks about Pyramid, and you know, there are some things going on, and nobody, the county, the board of supervisors are very excited about this. So we'll see, see what we can do to, lessen the impact on the folks of Dahlgren, for sure. So definitely know we're working on that. And I don't really have a report, but I also just need to reappoint someone to the building code Building Code Board of Appeals for the Dahlgren area. Miss Leslie Jordan, her term is expired, and I'd like to reappoint her to the Building Code Board of Appeals.
Second.
Is that like the BZA? Okay, well, a recommendation to the Circuit Court to have her reappointed to the Code Board of Appeals for a 5-year term.
Still second.
Okay. We have a motion properly seconded. All in favor, in discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye,
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate the comments that you have provided. I think a couple of my colleagues have mentioned it. We continue to investigate what can be done in regards to the pyramid situation. I can't go into any details, but we are actively trying to figure out what could be done, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a solution. Can't make any promises though. Other than that, did have the opportunity on Monday, February 13th. We had an FRE meeting. It was hosted at NSWCDD, Naval Surface Warfare Center, Dahlgren Division. For those who maybe aren't familiar, I'd like to say thank you to Captain Melnarski and Mr. Dale Sisson, who provided a tour beforehand. And then they're continuing. One of the big things is the tech transfer, trying to get the patents off of the base and into businesses to be developed commercially. So continuing to work those processes, make the quad charts and get those out to try to get them into businesses' hands, and so that they can hopefully set up business, locally and generate revenue for us by being a business that would then, take that forth and bring it to customers and to the population. That's all I had. So I will end members of the board's reports, and we will move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, motion please. Approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to constitutional officers. Report from Ms. Hart.
Good evening, everyone. The total packs of cigarettes sold in King George in December of 2022 is 332,292. From July 1 of 22 to present day, the total revenue for the stamps sold is $1,164,040.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. Did anyone have any questions for Ms. Hart? Thank you so much, Ms. Hart. Sheriff.
Good evening, members of the board. As far as for the investigative part of it, on February 3rd, 2023, Deanna and Deputy Simon conducted inspections of all the stores in King George County that are authorized to sell cigarettes. All the stores were in compliance with the King George County regulations as it relates to the tax stamp. They'll be conducting another round of inspections here soon, and I will certainly keep you informed. So, I can entertain any questions if you have any right now.
Thank you so much, Sheriff Giles. Did anyone have any questions for the sheriff? I think we're good, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Other constitutional? No. Okay. Report from the county attorney.
As I updated the Service Authority Board, there's been some interest in some companies getting antennas placed in the county. There's one site that's proposed that is at a site with a water tower, but the site is actually owned by the county. When I explained that to the possibly interested party a few months ago, that it would require approval of both boards, a longer process than they had possibly anticipated, they backed off, but they've reapproached me again. So I have direction from the Service Authority Board to review that proposal And it would require the approval of both boards if it does come to fruition. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that. Also, I wanted to give a brief update. There was a citizen who came during public comment a few months back and had concerns about hunting dogs on their property. I wanted to give the board an update that there was a case pending in Henrico County concerning that very matter. In the fall, the Henrico Circuit Court said that the state law was not subject to challenge in the way that that plaintiff was challenging the law that allows people to retrieve their dogs from private property. And the circuit court found in favor of that law. However, it is on appeal to the Court of Appeals. So I'll give you further updates as I have them available.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lackey. Did anyone have any questions for Ms. Lackey? I'll start with Ms. Bender.
I just want to thank you because that was from my district and then there's quite a few residents in the Shiloh district that do get impacted by that. So thank you for keeping abreast of it.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Ms. Lackey, could you send me the case number when you get a chance? And secondly, are the antennas will go on the water towers or separately?
So the one proposal that it would involve property that's owned by the Board of Supervisors, there's a water tower on the site, but there's also an antenna that's privately operated. And my understanding is that they would have placement on the antenna with some ground space would also be required. And that would also require some coordination with the sheriff's office because we wouldn't want any conflicts with their radio improvements project.
So that would be a separate antenna or one attached to it, a pre-existing antenna?
My understanding it would be an additional attachment. My current understanding is it would be an antenna attachment, and then there would be some kind of small ground space for it's beyond my expertise, but I think for some of the electrical components and things like that.
The other one is attached to a water tower?
And then in my report to the Service Authority Board, there's 2 other proposals that have come up recently. They are for a water tower location. As I understand, it would be to affix antenna to a water tower on sites that are fully owned by the Service Authority. So that wouldn't require action by this board at this time. I believe there's also a proposal, might be a little premature to mention, but there's also interest in a Parks and Rec site for a possible antenna. So that's also something. There's a lot of activity in that area at the moment. So I'll continue to update you on those, how those develop.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Ms. Lackey? Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Lackey. We will move on. We have no public hearings. Presentations. We have a Tri-County Soil and Water Conservation District Clean Water Award presentation.
Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, thank you for letting us. Yeah, I'm a little tall. Thank you. Thank you for letting us come out and speak tonight for our special little moment. We're with the Tri-County City Soil and Water District, and Janet Harris is a board director for us, one of my bosses. She's your King George rep. Our mission is to protect natural resources by promoting soil and water conservation and preventing non-point source pollution that can cause harm to Virginia's waterways. King George is one of 4 localities that we cover. We cover Stafford, Spotsylvania counties, and the city of Fredericksburg. So you guys generously fund us every year, and we want to let you know that we do give back to King George. Our 2022 cost share assistance to the county totaled up at $92,000, and we actually have a livestock practice finishing up that's going to add another 93 to that. So for 2022, $185,000 are given back to the county in practices to save the waterways. This year so far, our board has approved $230,000 to come back to King George. So again, thank you very much for your generosity, and that way we can provide this technical assistance. Every year, we give out a Clean Water Farm Award to a farmer that follows practices and has been working with us for a while. And this year, we we're giving to a King George farmer, Dr. Frank Moore. He farms roughly 500 acres in King George. What's different about him winning the award too is he's all grain farmer. Most of these awards tend to go to livestock producers for fencing cattle out of the water streams. But Dr. Moore has been practicing continuous no-till for years, which we preach to a lot of people. And he practices better fertilizer timing and placement. He also continuously uses our cover crop practices to reduce his soil erosion and movement of nutrients into waterways. We've never had any issues with Dr. Moore following any of our practices or not following them. He passes verifications with these every year, and we'd like to extend this award to Dr. Moore.
Picture. Mr. Chair, would you indulge a formal picture of the presentation in front of the board, please?
Absolutely. I'd like to say thank you for the presentation and recognizing one of our citizens. Dr. Moore, thank you for the effort you put into being conscientious in your farming activities. So thank you. All right, we'll move on to the branch build new courthouse presentation.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Abe Sankari. I'm the project manager on this job, this project. So I'm here to give you an update. I'm not gonna give you what's the project. I think you know all about it, right? Our substantial completion. We started November 6th last year, and our substantial completion gonna be next year, February 6th, and final completion 60 days after that, April 6th. And we're tracking to finish the job on time. So what we accomplished for now, we have the office on site, and we start having our meetings with all our trade partners. Of course, you're welcome to come and see how the scheduling going. And we have side camera. You can see the update every day. It takes one picture a day, an hour. So you'll see what's going on. Site clear, we completed the site clear, and we have the salt fence. Now we started lower level of it's 3 levels project. The lower level is now on grade, and we started foundations. We start storm structure as well from 11 to 21. Actually, we had more done. But the thing is, we slowed down because of the weather. We had some rain, but we're still on the schedule. Now the retaining wall, that's the one of our critical path on this job. It's 90% done. Foundations for the retaining wall all done. Here's some pictures. That's for the foundation of the retaining wall, and that's the retaining wall itself. We still have 2 pours, concrete pours, and that should be done this week, early next week. And that's on the end of here. go back. Should be on the end, right end and left end. That's the last board we're gonna have. All right. Some 4 weeks ahead. So we're gonna keep going on the storm structures and retaining wall. As I told you, we're gonna finish this week. Then we start also foundations level, the lower level. The goal is to finish all the foundations before the steel comes. The steel coming end of March, and that's on the schedule as well. No delays. Also, the waterproofing started today and on the retaining wall, so we can backfill. See this area, that's all gonna be backfilled once we've done the waterproofing for this wall. I don't know if you have any questions now, ask me about what we're doing as well. Here's some rain record we had. That's just slowing a little bit our foundations, but it's not that bad this year. But we're expecting to get more rain this month and following month. Now the building sequence is 7. That's for the steel structure. That's starting end of March. We have 7 sequences. Sequence 1 is the lower level, and that should start, as I said, end of March, and we'll finish the whole skeleton of the building end of May. Now the critical path, as I said, the retaining wall, and then the follow-up, the steel structure. And I'll give you an update once we started them. Once we finish the steel structure, we're gonna have a different critical path after that. Now here's a video, what we have accomplished. I don't know if you have seen that before. So the schedule is showing 70% done of the project, because all what we've done is critical for now, and we still already started fabrication. So that's a good thing as well. All right. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. You said 17% is done?
It's about 70%, yes.
And is there, as you stated, the rain really hasn't slowed you down too much?
We had some slow days, but the thing is, the critical path is the structural steel. If I finished all the foundations before the structural steel, I'm still on a good, no delays. But if I don't finish foundations before the steel, that's where the delay gonna start. But for now, we're on the schedule.
And it's April 6th, I saw, correct, is the completion date
That's
or move-in date?
Move-in date is after substantial completion. Once I have the occupancy permit, that's where the substantial completion, you can start moving. But I have 60 days for all the punch list or any item not done. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Charles? Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. All right, move on to Mr. Minor. Economic Development Incentive Zone presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Tonight I'm going to be giving a presentation on economic development incentive zones. So I'm going to go over the types and the creation of an incentive zone. So there are 4 incentive zones that a locality can put in. The other one is for a green zone, which incentivizes the development of an environmentally friendly building. In this case, we're just going to look at the ones that are involved with economic development projects. So for this case, we're looking at local technology zones, defense production zones, and tourism zones. So they can be created by the locality, by ordinance. You can create one or more of these development incentive zones, and each locality may grant tax incentives and provide certain regulatory flexibility in that zone. So it is a discretionary incentive. So what that means is that it does not have to be granted to the business. It is at the board's discretion whether or not they want to do so. So these are some of the existing economic development zones in our region. King George is the only locality that does not have them. Right now, this is an example of Spotsylvania County, where they've designated essentially their entire Route 1 and I-95 corridor an incentive zone, mostly in what they call the urbanized areas. They've also put one in, they put a technology zone and I believe a tourism zone next to Lake Anna, where they're trying to develop the more western part of the locality. Another thing to point out is just the thresholds that each locality has. Obviously, the more urbanized or the suburban localities in our region have a lower threshold for the incentive. City of Fredericksburg, lower. Caroline, rural locality, higher. And Stafford County has a bit of a, it's higher, but it's, the way that they've written theirs is a little different. And so I would expect if the board wants to move forward that we would do something in that range of Caroline County and Stafford County if we were to consider. So it gives the Board of Supervisors another economic development tool. So we've worked together to do the abandoned school revitalization zone. We worked together to do the Regional Industrial Facility Authority. Consider this as another economic development tool in the toolbox. So for a technology zone, and this is what I'm just recommending this go around, is just a technology zone and a defense production zone. So the zones are essentially the same thing. The only difference is one provides a 10-year incentive period. The defense production zone provides a 20-year incentive period. I did some research. I do not know why they extended the defense production zone to 20 and why they did technology at 10. The industries are essentially similar. Maybe it's based off of federal contracts, or maybe it's based off of some degree of what that industry does or how they invest their money. I'm not sure, but it's essentially the same. Just one provides double the incentive period. So it gives the board's regulatory flexibility if needed. So special zoning for that district, permit process reform, exemption from ordinances, any other incentive adopted by ordinance which shall be binding upon the locality for a period of up to 10 or 20 years in the case of a defense production zone. Excludes ordinances or provisions that are adopted pursuant to the requirements of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, Erosion Settlement Control Act, and the Virginia Stormwater Management Act. So what it's saying is that you can exempt all ordinances except for these that are state regulated and controlled, enforced by the locality. So it gives the county a targeted economic development incentive strategy. So it's predetermined sites and areas. For example, I do not market anything without the permission of a landowner, and that's number one. And then I do not market anything that I don't think is going to be attractive to an industry. So predetermined industries. So with the technology zone and defense production zone, we can specifically go after industries that we want. In this case, high tech, high capital investment, and low impacts. So locating near existing or future utilities. So I'm identifying sites where the utilities are already in place, the power, the internet, the water and sewer, or they will be in place based off of future development plans for that locality. So this is a business-friendly approach. So we're doing this because we want to be seen as a business-friendly locality, and this is one way we could do that by either offering these incentives or having them there and not getting any pushback from the Board of Supervisors or any of our regulatory processes because they're going where we want them to be. So this is, again, community-controlled development. So this can prevent haphazard economic development growth. So the concern of an industry coming into the locality and just spreading throughout the locality honestly shouldn't be a concern because of the current zoning of the locality, but what we're doing is incentivizing them to go where we want them to be. So the proposed areas are the Route 3 West Settlement Area, the Dahlgren Settlement Area, the Route 3 and 301 Settlement Area. However, for the Route 3 and 301 Settlement Area, unless recommended by the board, or directed by the county administrator, will look at the second business park parcels. And then for the Claydale settlement area, only include parcels 1772 and 1724, which are part of the Claydale property assemblage, which the county has been marketing for economic development for over 20 years. But there's just some challenges to that site. So here's the current zoning of the county here on the left-hand side. And I know it's kind of hard to see because of the colors, but the proposed areas are here in the Route 3 West Settlement area. The second business park parcels, this is the Claydale parcel, and all of the Dahlgren settlement area. So highlighted in green is also the service authority territories that we have public utilities, so you can see where we have them. The only place we really don't have it is the second business park. And then Claydale, it is connected to the courthouse system. There's an existing water tower there, but the system that makes the most sense for us to extend to it at a much later date, obviously, it would probably be the Dahlgren system. So this is a look at the Route 3 West zoning for that settlement area. This red line, I know it's hard to see, is where that settlement area is located. So we will be looking at placing those zones, defense production zone and technology zone, in these areas. These other purple here are industrial sites, but these are undevelopable sites with the exception of this one here, which is on the Farleyvale property, closer to the Rappahannock River. This is undevelopable. This is also a gravel pit. Here's what it looks like when it's not under zoning. So what we're considering, or what I would ask the board to consider, is the Taylor assemblage, the Birchwood power plant, because those are the most developable sites in that settlement area. The Reed Farm, there's a lot of wetlands and RPAs. You cannot develop on this parcel. This parcel here, I forget the name of it, but you cannot develop on this parcel here given the location and the RPAs that run through this parcel. Taylor has an RPA that runs through the back of it. You cannot develop on it. The only thing you can develop on is this flat frontage. Again, a gorgeous piece of property, but in total, you're probably looking at about 250 acres that's developable. The EDA owns everything in the back here. That's currently under option by Greenship. And then the EDA has control mostly of this industrial park that's under option or sold already. So this is the proposal for the second business park. This is the property that the county owns. The next three parcels that are just south of it, I'm talking to each and every one of these landowners. I have their permission to market these sites and to work with them on the second business park. Again, I do not market anything unless I have permission by a landowner to do so, right? So the reason why is because we control this parcel and there's already some commercial and industrial properties located next here. So this is sort of ideal for that next expansion. Looking at the Claydale. So Claydale, what you can't see in this presentation is the tough topography of this site. It's really tough. From a developable acreage standpoint, I'll take a guess at about 100 out of the 400 or 500 acres, maybe 100 to 150 acres may be developable. This is a hard ravine that this goes down into, and then it comes up onto a plateau. So anything developed will be developed at an elevation on this property here. There's an existing water tower here on the south side of it. And what we're looking at here is a collection of Claydale and ET. And then there's a huge buffer between the next neighborhood and that developable acreage. So it drops off in the back. There's a water buffer and obviously a tree buffer to that neighborhood. And again, the only reason why I would consider this is because it already has an industrial parcel on it. This is actually mixed zone. There's a whole story behind that we don't have time to go through tonight, but it's a mixed zone for like R2, R3, industrial, commercial, and then another industrial pad. And just let me back up just really quick and so these purple lines here is a 230 kV, which runs through the center of the county down Route 3. Here's another 230 kV that runs down the north and south side of the county that's owned by Dominion. The Claydale property is not served by Dominion. It is served by the Northern Neck Electric Co-op. And I point all this out because any industry that we're going after that would need to be incentivized is going to need that power line, number one, or at least 3-phase power. So the sites that are identified are sites where we can actually be competitive. They're not identified haphazardly. I'm literally looking at where's my infrastructure from a power standpoint, broadband standpoint, water and sewer standpoint, and saying this is where we can be the most competitive moving into the future. This is not a 5-year fly-by-night plan. This is, think more so 10, 15, 20 years, what we're going to be marketing down the road for King George County and how we can stay competitive. So moving on to the Dahlgren settlement area. Again, the majority of the settlement area is already zoned commercial. There's a nice little light industrial patch that runs right by that Dahlgren substation here for that 230 kV. Again, another ideal location for economic development projects. Mostly considering in this district, which is in the comp plan, is to look at light industrial zoning for honestly just R&D projects that complement the base. Not looking for anything heavy as in data centers or anything that can be considered super heavy in that Dahlgren district. We're only looking at office. We're only looking at R&D projects that complement the base, that complement the community. So zoning for economic development projects. So I just wanted to give the board and the community just an understanding of the total acreage of the county. So it's 115,000 acres. 102,000 of that is agricultural. Industrial, we currently have 1,500. Again, that's skewed by the mining operations. Mining operations, they're not ideal to develop on. Two, it costs way too much money to reclaim. They are not ideal locations for economic development projects. I have never seen a project come in and say, we want to be located on a mining operation. The other part of that is that mining operations, if I can back up to this large part. So you're looking at this parcel here. One that is on, I believe that's near the Belle Plains or Port Conway, Port Conway Road. There's no infrastructure back here to support any major economic development project. It would never be located back there unless there has been significant investment into reclaiming that property and making it something that somebody would want to develop on. These mining operations are essentially a no-go. They're not worth the time. It's not worth the money to pursue. So again, the development areas or the proposed economic development zones that I'm looking at are obviously the most ideal locations right now in the community. So again, total acreage for this is about 1,500, skewed by about 900 acres of mining. Commercially, we're at 2,715 or 3%. The only light industrial acreage we have in the county is 16 acres, and that's located in the Dahlgren Tech Park. So it's already there. About 6 acres is developable of that 16. And then what I'm asking for as a proposal, what could potentially be rezoned, not that it will be, but about 970 acres total, going from agriculture to either commercial, light industrial, and potentially industrial. So as a comparison, just to look at Stafford County, what they have as far as industrial, manufacturing, or commercial, obviously way higher than ours. Agriculture, they're at 54,000 acres. Even if we rezone at 970, we would still be way above 80, well, I wouldn't say 85%, but 83, 82% zoned ag in the county. We would remain a rural community for the next 10, 15 years. So the proposed targeted industries under consideration, I'm gonna try to speed this up here. You don't have a long board meeting. Commercial uses, light industrial, I've already mentioned high tech. And then for commercial, we're looking at secure space for development, secure space as, and I'm not gonna say SCIF, but secret to that secure space that your contractors can move into. Government contractors that are in that software engineering, cybersecurity, modeling, and simulation. Again, all complements to Dahlgren. Light industrial, only for R&D and low level, or I should say soft impact manufacturing. So prototyping, unmanned and autonomous systems. Chip manufacturing. For example, for a chip manufacturer, I'm not talking about a massive semiconductor manufacturer. Currently working a quantum computing project where they make quantum computing chips, right? That doesn't necessarily fit in our zoning right now, but they will be considered a manufacturer. That's a $20 to $30 million project, 20 jobs. Each job is a PhD. These are the type of jobs that we want to recruit here. We currently can't do that because we don't have the sites to do so. We don't have the incentive set up to do so. So robotics, computers, and custom metal manufacturing. And then obviously in industrial, you have your fitting under your technology zone, your data centers, your manufacturers, again, chip, robotics, computer, and custom metal manufacturing. So last slide here. So the recommendation, so the county should move to adopt formal incentives by ordinance in the form of technology and defense production zones. Target specific industries that complement our rural character but diversify our tax base, and then prevent speculation and doubt about where future economic development projects will be located, and create a business-friendly environment for expanding businesses. So I'm here to take any questions, discuss this openly with the board here this evening.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So, to the Route 3 industrial one, can you bring that map back up?
Sure. Oops. Can you help me out there? Thank you. Right there.
There was one that had a little green spot in it on Route 301 of that parcel.
301 or Route 3?
I thought it was, Route,
This is the Route 3 West
no,
subdivision.
no, I'm talking about 301,
Okay.
the new,
This one here, second industrial.
yeah, right there.
Yep, this here.
What's that?
So I just followed the curvature of the property. In front of this here, you have one abandoned house, another gentleman, I believe he either rents or owns, I'm not entirely sure. And then you have one renter here. So in this entire 200 and so 88 acres, you probably have 1 to 2 residents, maybe 3.
Okay, so that green one is somebody's house.
Right here, and then right here, they rent.
Okay. And the Clydell, one, what does ET mean?
ET is just what ET property owners. It's just the name of the LLC
Oh,
that
okay.
controls the property.
And it says, that even if we, formally adopted these, we wouldn't be held, we wouldn't have to actually do it if we didn't want to.
Exactly. So say for instance, a project comes in, they really want to be in the county, but there's either something that is making you non-competitive. This removes that and makes you competitive if the Board of Supervisors wants it. That's the simplest way to put it. It doesn't necessarily mean, I can't tell you specifically what ordinance is going to be that's going to make you non-competitive. You got to think, 15, 20 years in the future, right? What industry is there going to be out there that's either not currently in our ordinance, or we just haven't thought of yet, or what part of our process may slow us down where we need to be sped up in some cases in order to win? This will give you that flexibility to stay competitive. It's all about just being competitive.
I thank you. I understand that, but I don't always want to speed up. I always want to take our time and do it right. My question was, if we don't want to, if we adopt these, we still don't have to follow them,
That's
correct? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bender?
Yes, Mr. Monroe, thank you for putting this together. Some of this is in the Shiloh district, and I understand where the high tension power line goes. Go past my house and they go down to that Claydale property. And that property, I've been on it many times.
Correct.
Motocross, cross-country, fundraisers. It is a challenging property, and it is in a good location. And I understand about bringing in the STEM and everything that goes with the base. But I'm going to be a broken record on one part. I'm not for waiving ordinances to speed up the process. That's my big thing, especially seeing that there's some question. I would like a little more information about some of these industries. So I would take a little more cautious approach, but understanding that it is a good presentation and that I understand why. It's just, I really am not a big fan of blanket rezoning. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you, ma'am.
So if the board wanted to move forward with it, this would not be adopting anything tonight. This would be bringing forth a proposal to amend the ordinance and have a public hearing to then vote on it at some future date.
Right, currently to draft an incentive zone ordinance for the tech zone, defense production zone, and then with the approval of the board, move to have it adopted at a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I would add that there may be multiple ordinances that come out of something like this that you would have to consider, I would think, because you're amending other ordinances, or you possibly would be amending other ordinances. So we wanted to just get this in front of you because I think, you know, it is something that other communities, other counties are doing, where they have some kind of a pathway, I guess, when you start considering these particular types of industries. You know, what is the county prepared to work through on these things? And I think that's why we wanted to get this in front of you, let you know that this is what Nick is wanting to pursue. And obviously the next step would be to have Miss Lackey or prepare whatever legal aspects of this so that it would be in place. What other things you guys want to have in place?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in having conversations with the base commander, he says he's out of space in his base, and he's out of space outside of his base. He said he needs more places. So since COVID, some of the restrictions have changed on their sensitive work. But he said he doesn't have any place outside the base. He needs places outside the base in order to do their work. So keep that in mind. And I don't mean to be the bad guy, but I don't really care about Stafford. I don't really care about Spotsylvania. The only one I care is about King George. And I don't want to look like Stafford, and I don't want to look like Spotsylvania. I understand the business incentives. I'm not against the business incentives. And I'm not against the plan of these locations. But I am against making us try to match up to some other localities, just like the schools. Stafford raisers, teacher salaries, and Prince William did Fairfax. It's all downhill, then it comes to King George. So it's just like this, keep following behind these counties. I think that, you know, we should stop following behind and be who we are. Thank you.
And Ms. Bitter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I want to say again, and being a broken record again, is that we go through our ordinance process before we start changing ordinances and all that, and understand we probably need a comp plan review, because it is correct that we are up this year. Or is it next year for comp plan? Yeah, so it'd be next year. So this would go all in line. So just being mindful of that.
Mr. Dunhill, Ms. Kupka, either you have? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minor, for the presentation. So just so we're clear, the slide, Mr. Dines, can you go back to page 13?
Back one.
So that the acreage of proposed land would need to be rezoned from agricultural.
Correct.
That is not tied to the development of the ordinances for the incentive zones, correct? That would need to be a separate process. Am I understanding that correctly? Because those would require rezoning of specific parcels.
Correct. So what I'm trying to provide is what I'm proposing.
A framework
Exactly. What I'm proposing.
to offer incentive packages.
So if we were to move forward with what the proposed area that's drawn out, in those proposed areas, 970 acres of it is zoned ag. So 340 of it is just a Taylor assemblage alone. The ET property is about 300 acres as well of zoned ag. So with those two properties alone, you're already at 600 acres. The other ag is probably within the Dahlgren district. There might be another, well, then there's 288 of it that's in the, well, not 288, but about 188 of it that's in the second proposed business park.
So what you're really just maybe looking for tonight is direction from the board with regard to, do you continue developing these incentive zones or not? Because a rezoning would be a completely separate
Right, we're
requirement.
just looking at ordinances. We're not asking for any type of rezoning for anything. This is just to have a formal incentive process for the county, targeted industries, thresholds, so that that business that comes in, they know what they have to do. in order to just qualify for these incentive zones. Once they qualify, the board can decide how they want to incentivize, and it could be either through regulatory flexibility or through incentives that has to do with reduction in fees or personal property tax rebates, is however the board wants to incentivize that business.
Thank you.
So I think it would make sense to bring forth something and to work on crafting some kind of ordinance to be entertained by the Board of Supervisors. But that's just one person, so I'd leave it to my colleagues to make a decision if they would like to pursue something like this or not.
Mr. Chair. Nick, thanks for bringing this up. Some real good information, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think that we definitely got to, there are a lot of incentives that are out there for businesses, all different kinds of businesses to come in. And we need to get out and start giving some of these incentives out to the businesses. This could be a good way to start doing it, but I would be all in favor of continuing working on developing that.
So in regards to the incentives, so is there time periods on these? In other words, they last with the building? In other words, you give 5% off their personal property for the life of their building, the life of their business? Or is it for 5 years, 3 years?
Right, so you're capped at 10 for the tech zone. You're capped at 20 for the defense production zone.
What do you mean you capped it?
So you can only provide those incentives for that business
For that time?
for that 10-year period. That's if you so choose. I mean, depending on the project,
So you can do less though?
absolutely. You don't have to do any.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to bring it up again. I am not for putting something up to be a changed ordinance. I know rezoning and ordinances are different, but once again, we're putting the cart before the horse. So I agree that this is really good because when I was on the HB 206 committee, numerous times the solar developers and other developers said we just need to have a plan so everybody's treated the same and that it's all mapped out. And I agree with that. But I'm not for changing the process because we need to not put the cart constantly before a horse just because we're trying to attract people here. We need to let the process go to its completion. Thank you.
So isn't this not more about the incentives financially than anything else? So the ordinances, when that word came up, Ms.
Right.
Bender and I both, it red flagged us. But the other stuff didn't red flag me, the incentives financially. So are you saying that the ordinance would be changed? What incentive of an ordinance can be changed for a developer, a manufacturer to come here?
So, Mr. Collins, I don't know if I can answer that question because every case is different. It's honestly just giving you the power to help if you so choose. So if there is an ordinance within the county that is blocking the project, that is killing the project, this gives the board that ability to help in some form or fashion. That's what that's in there for. To give you a specific case study, I'd really have to do a lot of research to sort of find something that in the Commonwealth where a locality is used.
So if the ordinance says business needs a certain setback, we can say, we can disregard that ordinance?
Correct. Or some form or fashion of that. That might be something that you might want to talk to Ms. Lackey about before the board chooses to do so.
Yeah, I think that would be, I'm all for the financial incentives, but I'm not so much for some of that stuff.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would just point out, this is not particularly different than what this board did earlier or last year, I'm sorry, in adopting a revitalization district in our ordinance as well as an abandoned school revitalization zone, correct? We did not change the zoning of either of those two parcels relative to that zone. We just made an incentive tool for you and your staff to be able to use to market those properties.
Correct.
Thank you.
Just going to say, I think Mr. Miller has something to add to help.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. So again, I think that is important. There is nothing about this that says we're going to go in and blanket rezone something. That there's too much involved in the land use development process, the rights of citizens in the area or adjacent property owners. So that's not what this ordinance was proposing. What this ordinance or these incentive ideas is to kind of try to essentially give Nick another marketing tool. I think that's one way that you could look at it. It then would have some parameters that could work with the right direction from the board. It's not meant to try to sidestep anything that legally exists right now. I mean, you're going through a major rezoning process. It's not meant to undermine that process. It is meant to basically say, you're open for business. You encourage this particular type of business to come to your community, and you're going to work with those particular businesses who might be interested in your community to work through the process. So I think that's what really the most important thing. I think Mr. Collins is right there. It has some financial incentives that we would be interested in talking to them about. You're not locked in at the 10 and the 20. That's the ceiling, if you will. You would, as a board, negotiate whatever agreement you would have with a particular company. If a company came in and they wanted some incentives, you would get it on a case-by-case basis. But this kind of helps to put them into a pipeline, if you will, or to give them an understanding. That's always important, I think, when economic development prospects are coming. They like to know what's the playing field that they're entering. You know, are they going to have issues with these kind of things? Are they going to have challenges in terms of getting permits done? Are they going to have challenges in terms of the incentives that you might give back to them? Those are things that have to be handled case by case, but this will give Nick a vehicle by which to do it. So that's, I think, what we were looking at. I don't know if you want to ask Ms. Lackey specifically about any of the legal process of this, because I realize that is a concern that you have.
So as far as leveling the playing field, I would think that keeping the ordinances and not making a step around to the ordinance for a big company would be what we would be more about. I would think that. We just heard some problems with some of that stuff. So why can't we just not have the ordinance thing in there? You can still have these zones, but to change some of the ordinances to make it more, they can see what the ordinances are. They can come here. And this is what we could offer them in an incentive for whatever company. One might be another, 2% off their personal property or whatever it is. Deferred something or another. But why do we have to have a change to the ordinance other than putting those zones in there? Why do we have to change why would we have to make a decision on coming in front of the board for us to make a decision because Bob's big boy, big, whatever it is, some big company wants our ordinance changed so they can do what they want. Why would we change a ordinance for a specific company? Why would we do that?
As Mr. Minor was showing, there might be certain industries that we would prefer to see in certain areas because it maybe makes sense. And at the end of the day, if you're bringing a business in, it's not because I want the business. It's great. Businesses succeed. I have nothing against them. What I'm interested in is the positive impact they can have on our community. And if someone can have a large revenue impact, that is an aspect to consider in regards to helping to offset tax requirements to the citizens in order to meet the needs of our sheriff, our fire and rescue, our schools. So yes, I would look at certain ones and say, hey, this is in the best interest of all of the citizens of our county. And it might make sense to maybe have certain industries that would be more attractive because it is not as high of an impact to our community, but it would, from a negative perspective, but it would have a lot of positive impacts that would be able to help us out, I think. But Mr. Minor, I don't know if you have anything further to put in on that.
From the regulatory standpoint, I can't tell you how it will be used in the future. I can just tell you that it's probably better to have it than to not have it moving into the future. I don't know what other project may come where the site may be perfect for what they want to do, but there's something in our ordinance that's preventing it, and it could be a setback. It could be honestly, it could be anything that we have in there that is not necessarily outdated, but because of one regulatory requirement that we have that may have no impact on the neighbors, it may have no impact on transportation, it may have no impact on anybody outside of the boundaries of that property, but it's impacting their ability to develop that site. I'm just giving you a scenario that could happen. Anything could happen, or it could be nothing. But I work for the county administrator who works for the board. This ordinance at the end of the day will be adopted or not adopted, but be considered by the board to be adopted. So we can craft this however the board would like.
I'll just ask my colleagues, how do you feel? Are you interested in having, I have a yes from Ms. Kupka, Mr. Stonehill?
Yes, I think it's definitely something we need, and to help attract to these locations that Nick has identified, so they're not popping up right across the street here in our backyards. These are the working areas that he wants to incentivize, to get incentive packages for businesses in those areas. So it keeps it, it's not going to be sprawl all over. So yes, I'm in favor of it.
I believe I know Mr. Collins and Ms. Benders, but I'll ask.
I keep hearing the word ordinance, and that's still bothering me. Because even though it's an incentive package, and some of it really does make sense, especially to attract business, I keep hearing the word ordinance. And we're spending all this money to redo our ordinances. But once again, here we go. We're changing the ordinance before we're done. So why did we even pay for it?
Is this the change to our zoning
I
ordinance?
keep hearing the word.
Mr. Chair.
So we have lots of different ordinances. We're redoing our zoning ordinance. That's what we're paying to have investigated and developed, is a redo of all of our zoning ordinance. There's a number of other ordinances in our code as well, and so this would be outside of the zoning ordinance.
Well, I disagree with that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I read the Code of Virginia? Article 9, Local Technology Zone, creation of local technology zones. Any city, county, or town may establish by ordinance one or more technology zones. Each locality may grant tax incentives and provide certain regulatory flexibility in a technology zone. So if we want to do this, the Code of Virginia says you must adopt a local ordinance to do so. Then if you look at the abandoned school revitalization zone, I'll go back to that again. That is not in the zoning, nor is it in the subdivision ordinance. It is under Chapter 14, taxation. So that would be where that would belong in the local ordinance, not in the zoning nor the subdivision ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Lockey, can I have those two codes sent to me tomorrow? Thank you very much.
Okay, I know Mr. Stonehill and Ms. Kupka said they were in favor. I'm 100% sure Ms. Bender's against. Mr. Collins?
So there does seem to be some. So this would be in a tax ordinance?
So how we classify it, certain localities classify it differently. We can classify it as tax. I've seen other localities classify it as economic development ordinances. It's however our locality wants to classify it.
And so it doesn't affect the zoning ordinance?
No. So you gotta be specific. Does it affect the zoning ordinance? It can if the board chooses. It does not take away from any regulatory authority that's currently in the zoning. You can only adjust that authority if the board chooses to use that as an incentive to recruit that project or to attract that business. You do not have to use it.
But it won't modify the zoning ordinance or
No.
the subdivision ordinance
No.
code.
No, no.
So I would be interested in an ordinance and maybe the tax section for, for economic development for these zones for the purpose financially. I would want to target these industries to diversify our tax base, but for financial incentives. I'd like to just keep that in that narrow scope. That would be mine.
Understood. I'm in favor of moving forward with the ordinance and crafting something that could be brought back to the board to be considered. So I believe we have, I think, 3 who are just in favor. I know Mr. Collins would like to see more scoped, which we could continue to discuss once it's brought forth to the board. So I think you have direction to continue working on it.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. Move on to action items. Mr. Minor. The budget for the Go Virginia Young Entrepreneurs Program Grant Award.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On December 20th, 2022, the Economic Development and Tourism Department received notification of grant award in the amount of $98,000 from the Go Virginia Young Entrepreneurs Program. The grant funds will be used to support the development of prospective young entrepreneurs locally and regionally. Staff recommends acceptance of the Go Virginia Young Entrepreneurship Grant Award.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Minor?
Is there a local match? I forget.
So the only local match that's required is in-kind contribution. So that's in the form of staff time, marketing, staff time by the schools, any materials used by the schools, any materials used by my department. That's where that match is required.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one.
I'll make a motion for the acceptance of the Go Virginia, it's Go Virginia, correct?
Correct.
Young Entrepreneurs Program Grant Award.
Second.
All right, we have motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. All right, I believe Mr. Minor again.
Thank you, sir. On February 8th, 2023, the Economic Development and Tourism Department received notification of a grant award from the Virginia Tourism Corporation in the amount of $30,000. The grant award will be used for the overall promotion of King George County and the installation of a Native American trail. Staff recommendation is to accept the Virginia Tourism Corporation ARPA award in the amount of $30,000.
Any questions?
I just want to thank Mr. Minor because I know you've been working on this for a while.
Yeah,
And the UMW students were part of this, correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
So thank you. And I'll make recommend acceptance of the Virginia Tourism Corporation ARPA award in the amount of $30,000 as a motion.
Motion?
Second the motion.
Second? All right, motion properly seconded. Any discussion?
Is there a local match?
No match. This is ARPA funding.
Thank you.
So the requirement. Yep. Good.
All right, any other discussion or questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. All right, we move on to Department of Fire and Rescue, FEMA Assistant to Firefighter Grants. Mr. Lind.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, bring before you at the February 7th, 2023 board meeting, the AFG grant was presented. There was an error in the share amounts listed on the board report. The report incorrectly listed the federal share as $163,363.36 and a local share of $16,363.34. The actual correct share is $163,636.36, and the correct local share is $16,363.64. The grant total remains $180,000 with a federal share of $90,000 and a local share of 10%. Grant is to purchase 4 Zoll monitor defibrillators. We bring this back to the board so the federal cost share and the locality share match is set up correctly in the financial system. At the February 7th meeting, the board accepted the grant and authorized the county administrator to execute a PO with Zoll Medical. Due to the contract pricing and trading values, the department can purchase the additional fifth defibrillator using this grant award. The trade-in value reduces the county's local share to $7,363.64, incorrectly listed on the February 7th board report as $7,363.34.
Does anyone have any questions? All right,
I'll make a motion for the acceptance of the FEMA AFG award with corrected federal and local share amounts.
Second.
all right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
All right.
We got fire, yes. The FEMA Disaster Public Assistance Funds.
Mr. Chairman and Board, we wanted to bring tonight to you a report of the work that we've been doing with the other county departments on the winter storm, January 3rd, 2022 winter storm, and the COVID-19 pandemic public assistance disaster and reimbursement process. Briefly, a presentation just showing some of the highlights. Just wanted to point out some of the strengths of how the county came together in support to respond to the winter storm. Obviously, the teamwork was very important. Also, the leadership from the county administrator and the board to bring all the departments together to meet the needs of the citizens in that event. And also the partnerships with our outside partners. Had great communication with VDOT, Virginia State Police, Dalgar Navy Base, VDEM, and also our electrical utilities, Dominion and Northern Neck, in reporting their process and their outage restoration and keeping us informed the best they could. Also, the investment that the board's made in past in critical infrastructure in our county, the generators, the ability to operate shelters, and some of the technology that we use, we were able to bring together in support of that event. For the winter storm, just some high-level numbers just to show the citizens how big of an event it was. Looking back at the records, in support of the power outages that the county experienced, the county logged over 2,100 hours of generator time. Most of that was for Service Authority, but also Fairview Beach was out of power for a long time, so the Fairview Beach Firehouse was on generator power. Also, looking at all the staff time, over 1,100 hours of staff time was attributed to the winter storm event. Debris management, we grinded about 4,200 cubic yards of storm-related debris the citizens brought to Sealson's Convenience Center. And tracking vehicle time between Fire and Rescue, the Sheriff's Office, General Properties and Service Authority, we tracked over 600 hours of county vehicle time in support of that event. Some of the costs that we were able to submit to FEMA, obviously over $76,000 in generator time, $9,700 in snow removal costs, General Properties, and also Service Authority in order to maintain the generators. The debris pile grind was $13,000, almost $14,000. The Sheriff's Office had about $21,000 of storm-related expenses, overtime, vehicle time. Fire and Rescue, we had $36,000 storm-related expense, vehicle time, staff time. And the warming shelter that we opened up at the Citizen Center, Parks and Rec and Department of Social Services, their staff operated the center, so they had about just over $5,000 worth of staff time to support that. Of all that submitted to FEMA, 91% of it is going to be eligible for reimbursements, and brings the county total to about $149,192.98. And we broke that down for the Service Authority costs, and that's going to be $66,082.03 of that funding. The $149,000 that would go back to the Service Authority, their costs for generator time and stuff like that, leaving about $83,000 would be back to the county departments for county operation. Us, Fire and Rescue, Sheriff's Office, General Properties, and the grind, and also to support the warming center. So the board report breaks it down. King George breaks it down also with the COVID expenses, and COVID was different. COVID actually was funded 100% reimbursement from the federal government for our expenses. And during the total response to that event, we calculated about $38,000 worth of expenses. A lot of it was spent, back in April of when it first started, April of 2020, in that spring. And that ended up being at $28,000. A lot of PPE, the social distancing and the barrier devices that were put up in the county buildings in order to keep the county workforce safe and the citizens can still conduct their county business. And we got a big portion of that money back in April of last year. And we also got about another $10,000 that we're still waiting for reimbursement. And that's been expenses over the last 2 years or so, mainly PPE, masks, disinfectant, COVID test kits and stuff for fire and rescue. So we've got those expenses, reimbursement coming back. And in the board report, just showing that for the COVID-19 pandemic, a total of $38,000. And with the recommendation of how it'd be deposited, then also for the January winter storm of $149,192.98, includes a service authority reimbursement of $66,082.03 to be exact, and with the recommendations on how that money should be deposited. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one.
I'll move to accept the FEMA Disaster Public Assistance Funds for COVID-19 pandemic and January 3rd, 2022 winter storm to reimburse expenses previously paid through operating budgets, and the funds should be deposited in the general fund revenues as presented in the summary.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that was the last of our action items, so we'll move on to the county administrator's report.
We'll wait for this to be pulled up. I know that Ms. Fish introduced herself to everybody, but Jackie Fish is our new executive assistant. She'll be working with you all, and I just would like to publicly thank Lauren Petrusky for her efforts. She was doing double duties, and she was doing a great job in both roles, and I'm sure she's happy to get back to the administrative assistant role. I'm a hard boss, I guess. I don't know, but I know Ms. Fish is going to do great things for us, and so I'm very pleased. She came through a very competitive process. I think I indicated we had over 55 applications for this position, and so and you all may see her as a familiar face because she has been the recording secretary for the Planning Commission. So she's in on a lot of the Planning Commission activities. She probably is more intimately knowledgeable about it than myself because she sits through those. But to-do list updates. So if you remember the last meeting, we kind of got towards 11 o'clock, I think it was, in the evening. And I indicated that if you would like, we can go through this a little bit more in depth if there's some questions. The same standard that we provide to the service authority on their to-dos. The items in red are the updates, and the items in yellow or brown are the items that have been completed. And I think the direction was you wanted to see the completed items on there for I think 4 months, 3 months, something like that. Was that correct, Mr. Collins? So we will continue to track those. But but you can see some of the things that are on there. A lot of capital projects. I think that was one of the things I really wanted to emphasize. We have a lot of capital balls in the air right now. Departments are doing a great job of managing those things. And then, of course, we have some other things that Ms. Lackey is obviously tracking with some of the things that you all have asked of her in terms of different ordinances, different things as they apply to existing ordinances, and like the 21st Amendment for the landfill agreement. She's working through that with Mr. Newcheck. So we are obviously tracking a lot of things, and I'm happy to go through these if you would like, or if there's any specific questions about some of these.
Mr. Chair, I just have one. I'm looking through real quickly. Have we not gotten all points broadband to?
They are, yes, I can provide an update. They indicated they could be here on the 21st of March. We tried to get them earlier, and this was the best they could give us. So I'm sorry. I had stressed that as something that back as far as January, and they, anyway. So
Well,
I know there are lots of questions about where they are, what's their timeline, and we have passed that information to them, that there's a lot of concerns about not just board members, but constituents about where are we, what's going on. And so the 21st, Mr. Innes is committed to me that he will be here.
Great. Thank
in
you very
person,
much.
Not on
That's
the phone.
the best part, in person. Thank you.
Are there any other?
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Miller?
Budget schedule. I guess I wanted to get clarification. We want to, I'm pretty certain that we're going to be starting here may not be the week of the 7th, but of March, but it will be very much right behind that. And I know Mr. Collins has indicated, again, the request for no Wednesday meetings. And I think that you all had accommodated that. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I do need to notify all the committee members, the advisory committee members, of the schedule. But were you interested in doing Tuesdays, Thursdays? I know obviously board meetings, you can't do that. And then if you're going to do Tuesdays, there are the planning commission meetings sometimes are in here. And that would require like going to the fire station or sheriff's office. So I think it's just a matter of preference. Obviously, there's some hard and fast dates that I don't believe the state is messing with this year, because it's a short schedule this year. But I know May 15th is when you have to notify the schools that you've accepted their budget or your, whatever. And then they don't have until, I think it's the end of March, when they officially don't have to present that. I know in conversations with Mr. Boyd and in conversations with Ms. Bender, they are interested in the possibility of being a little earlier in the process. And we can work that, as part of that work session, to get them in here and talk about any highlights that they might have and things like that. So
when are you looking to have when's staff going to be ready for the first meeting?
So we're wrapping up our stuff internally. I wish Ms. Hahn is not here, but I believe I'm going to put her on the spot. I think we could have something that week of the 7th, where you could have again, it's the process of kind of that formation meeting where you guys kind of tell us that there's specific departments that you want to have here. We present things like any personnel requests, increases or additions, if you will. And then we wanted to talk about where we stand on some of our existing projects and the possibility of having some things put in this year's budget as opposed to carrying over to the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that organizational type meeting we could commit to having something that week of the
7th.
7th to the 9th.
The 7th would not be the right day.
Right. So maybe the 9th or something like that.
Also, my colleagues, that week is there any days that are no good for someone?
The 9th works great.
Okay.
I'll be gone after the 10th. for a little while.
Okay.
Thank you for considering not doing it on Wednesdays. I'm still in that same Bible study. I would suggest that we have the big three come first, which is schools, fire and rescue, and the sheriff's office.
So I think we'd probably discuss that as well at the first meeting, the organizational one, because the first one, we're not going to have anyone. It will just be kind of the kickoff. It'll be one of our shortest work sessions, but
Okay.
we can discuss that and certainly see if the rest of the board is interested in that as well. The 9th, does that work for my colleagues, Mr. Stonehill, Ms. Bender? 9th will work.
Okay, and to clarify so we are working the capital budget right in behind as close as we can, but you realize that the capital budget has to first be presented to the planning commission. And so I believe Ms. Hahn has asked that it be presented possibly on the night of the 14th of March. So that would allow us then to track really closely behind so that you can see it as part of your operating/capital, because I know that was the request.
Tracking makes sense to me. Everyone else amenable with that? Oh, good question. What time?
Would you guys like to do it? You want to do it a little earlier?
I'm available earlier than 6:30. I'll leave it to my colleagues though if they have other.
I'm available all day.
The earliest I can do is 5:30.
That's what I was going to say. And just please send a calendar invite.
Mr. Stonehill, would you be able to do 5:30? Is that too early?
Maybe.
6? Okay. 6.
6 p.m. on the 9th. We will set it up and we'll do a calendar invite.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Another item that I have is to track for your schedule. This is in regards to the rezoning and the that process with the looking at the battery storage, power plants, and the noise that the Berkeley Group is going to do for us. They've indicated that they are available to do a joint meeting the 25th of April and also the 30th of May. Now, the 30th of May is the Tuesday after Memorial Day, so you may not be interested in doing that, but that was what they indicated. They could come back and focus on things that you guys wanted them to focus on.
25th of April.
And the 30th of May.
I'll ask my colleagues. We'll start with the 25th of April. Does that work for everyone?
Is there better earlier than May?
I agreed. I would like to not sit on it. Ms. Bender?
I'm trying to find my calendar for
It's okay.
one date.
I'll reach out to Mr. Stonehill and Ms. Kupka. Should just check my own as well. Okay. While Ms. Bender's looking to see if that will work, is there anything else you had for us, Mr. Miller?
The only couple things, the Anthem Mary Washington agreement, you're aware that they came to an agreement. Now, Anthem is the primary insurer for county employees. So there was Derek Messler, who comes from that hospital world, was watching it and was very much aware and informing our employees. I know we had several personnel that were worried and some people that had actual surgery scheduled that they were tracking. And of course, they've signed an agreement. So that's good news from a county employee standpoint, but we were watching it all along. And we were prepared to provide you with an update if they didn't get the agreement about how we were going to work with our employees to make sure they got care and all taken care of. So Christmas tree update. So as you know, we've had the Christmas tree that exists at the courthouse here. I think, as you may know, that it is diseased. It is not in good shape. And the general property staff and the Parks and Rec staff have come to me and said it's time for us to do something. We had the Stafford arborist come and she assessed it. It has got a fungus. She spelled out specifically how you're to get rid of the tree. And so when you cut the tree up, you're supposed to bag it immediately. Don't allow it to spread or anything, the fungus to spread. So knowing that this is a major community event that we have every year, my recommendation is myself and Mr. Muncy and Mr. Clark and any board member who might want to be a part of it, help us with the selection of the next tree. I know the estimate that Mr. Muncy had given me for, I can't remember the exact tree, but it was in the realm of like $500 for like a 12-foot tree. And I said, I think you ought to go bigger if we can get it. But I do think that it would merit, somebody's participation. We're happy to bring back some items or some choices, if you will, of trees, because I know that it's a symbol of community pride and everybody really enjoys that event. So don't necessarily need direction right now, but if anybody's got an interest, a burning desire to be on that, we can.
I'll ask my colleagues, did anyone want to be a part of that? If no one does, I don't mind being part of it, so.
If you want to do it, that's
Sure.
fine. I don't, if not, I'll do it.
Sure.
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. And I'll get with those guys and we'll set up. Employee anniversaries and new hires, a lot of them. Mr. Lind, congratulations, 21 years. We have a number, let's see if we have anybody else in here. We have Ms. Petrusky, who's listening online, 2 years with the county. Charlie Clark, Deputy County Commonwealth Attorney, 9 years. Sherry Newton in finance, 11 years. As you can just see that we try to recognize all these folks. So that's what our folks are doing in February. Good hire date, I guess. And that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. First gonna ask Ms. Bender, did you?
Yes, I did. It was April 25th, right?
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay, so I think we are all in favor of April 25th. I'm imagining timeframes would be similar in regards to what would be board's availability. So 6 probably. Okay, 6. Okay. Did anyone have any questions for Mr. Miller? All right. And Mr. Miller, you said that was the end of your administrative report. Okay, thank you. In that case, I believe we have a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors convenes in closed meeting for 1, discussion of the Segway crossing litigation pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3711A7 for consultation or briefing with legal counsel regarding actual litigation, and State Code 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters, and 2, discussion of disposal of surplus property or potential property acquisitions pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 for discussion or consideration of acquisition of real property for public purpose or the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. We are in closed session.
I move that King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from an open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convened the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Ms. Bender, do you certify?
So certify.
Mr. Collins?
Certify.
Ms. Kupka?
So certify.
Mr. Stonehill?
So certified.
Chair so certifies. We are back in open session. I will entertain a motion. For adjournment.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to March 7th, 2023 at 6 PM in the boardroom.
Six.
Is it 6:30? I was just reading the bottom of the
Does say
synopsis.
6 on there. It should be 6:30.
Yes, it does say 6.
All right. So would you mind making an amendment?
Yes, I will make a minute. I'll make a second motion to adjourn to March 7th, 2023 at 6:30 PM in the boardroom.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.